Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another very special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Anna with us. Welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
So glad you're here. And I want to share for our audience, how this happened and why I'm actually extra excited about talking with you. So, Anna, you sent me a message on Instagram like a couple of weeks ago, and basically just like said, thanks for all the content and everything. And as I often do, I said, I'm so glad you found it. So glad it's been helpful. And if you ever want to be a guest, then you'd be welcome to. And you said yes. But here's the thing: I didn't realize at the time that you had actually been working with Alina in Bedtime, right? And
Yes.
so when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk with somebody who worked with, one of our other coaches. So I'm extra glad that you're here. And with all that said, please go ahead and, share your story, and then we'll have a discussion around that. So the word is yours, Anna.
Yeah, well, I guess just to add to what you said, so in the past few months, I started really binge watching a lot of your content and commenting here and there. And then really was noticing a lot of progress. And the Instagram message you're talking about, I said actually that you saved my life, which I really believe. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I just want to throw that out there. But you're so humble and you just say, yeah, thank you. No, I genuinely stand by that statement. Um, so yeah, how I've been racking my brain trying to summarize the struggle because I know a lot of people relate. Sometimes it's a long one, and we could talk for hours about it. But basically, what I've come to sum up is that I really don't view the struggle as one of when insomnia started, but more so when I started to become so attached to outcomes generally. And so going back, let's say 26 years, um, I've always felt a lot of anxiety with different events and pressure around things like, tests in school, or I played competitively tennis for a long time. And I would put so much pressure on myself and be really attached to, getting a good grade or winning a match or anything like that. And so I think that, as you call it in bedtime, that predisposition was always there. And then I would, have sleepless nights here and there, but never really think about it because, as you say, most people in the world have some sort of a struggle with sleep at one point or another. But the difference with insomniacs is the narrative we assign to it, right? So um, I think it was right after I finished college that I had a string of bad nights, and I that narrative emerged of, you're not going to sleep, you can't sleep anymore, you have to solve this problem, because I'm a very problem solver person, which with insomnia is maybe not the best. So anyways, that kind of kicked off what's now been a 4 year long struggle. And I'm really in a different place now because it's been about a year since I found you and bedtime, and I can talk a little bit about that later too. But I don't want to drag on too long for the first question.
Oh no, not at all. I think that you set this up so nicely. And so about like 4 years ago, you were graduating college, right? And then something happened. And was there a specific stress, or it just kind of sort of out of the blue, sleep was on the radar? What happened then?
Yeah, so I graduated college and I stayed in Boston, and a lot of my friends left, and it was a big transition. So I was, living on my own for the first time, and I was trying to find new friends and getting involved in some activism and just really, questioning a lot of my life. And and then with that comes a lot of pondering late at night, which then can inhibit sleep. So that was the first major event. But like I said before that, there were nights here or there where, there would be a conflict or something with someone I love, and then, I'd lose sleep over it. But then the next day I wouldn't even think, and I would just assume I'm going to sleep that night. But then when this turbulent period came around, I really started to just question that ability, which obviously is false, but it takes a lot of unlearning to really get to the other side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes so much sense. Like you had, there was some transition, some stress and things like that. and also like bandwidth. Probably you were maybe not as distracted, and somehow our brain can go into like this internal problem solving, and now like sleep is on the radar. So like, well, what happened? Was it like a yeah? What happened next?
Yeah, so well, I really just wasn't sleeping, and I had a job at the time, and it really impacted my ability to, I mean, uh, show up really present because of all the stress, not necessarily because of the lack of sleep, just because of all the pressure I was putting on myself. And I would go in late, and I was really honest with my struggle actually about all my with all my coworkers, and they were really nice, but all they could offer was the typical kind of sleep hygiene narrative, which, as we all know, does not help, and it really actually just makes everything worse. So then, kind of descended a bit, spiraling. And then, so I was in a long distance relationship at that point as well. And then, kind of a few months later, um, my ex moved to Boston, and then we moved in together. And there was sort of change in environment, and I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. Really, it was just maybe comforting to have him around. So then I would have various periods of good, okay sleep. And it was funny just looking back at what I saw as the rationale for that. Um, so one stretch of time, I remember there was like a mantra I would tell myself at night around. I would repeat to myself like, "You're tired. You're gonna sleep. You're tired. You're gonna sleep," which is almost kind of delegation because you're telling yourself, just let go. Your body will decide, which I know now. But back then I was like, I don't know what this voodoo is, but this is really helping me. And then inevitably something would happen, and I would kind of have a setback, and then try another thing. And I mean, I definitely went through a period of using Xanax, which was not great, and actually ended up making my sleep worse. And so yeah, just like all sorts of ups and downs. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing this, and just for the audience to get a like a sense of what it was like. I guess two questions. Was it for you? Was it kind of like nights where you were like up almost all night, or was it more like the fragmented sleep, or what was it like?
Yeah, it was a mix. I mean, it's interesting. I really spent a lot of time tossing and turning because I I almost refused to quit. I was kind of like, no, I have to sleep. I have to, do this. So I have to just lay here and suffer and hope for the best, right? So I don't know, kind of, I don't think it was fragmented sleep per se, but I do think it was kind of like just a few hours a night, really at the worst, and kind of, sometimes it would be somewhere in the middle, like 4 or 5 hours. So it really ran the gamut because, again, it's been 4 years. So, it's been a nonlinear process. And there's times where it's been more acute and others when it's not. So, yeah, that was my
No,
experience.
no, that it gives us a picture of what happened, and the other question was like, you know, you feel free to answer about like this time period we're in now, or generally, or let's say in this time period you were talking about now, when it started to become a real struggle. You said, you mentioned kind of like this mantra, and you were on Xanax for a while. What other things did you try at that point?
Yeah, so I actually found another app. I was just looking in the app store, was like desperate, and I don't remember the name anymore, but I found this other app where there was also a sleep coach, and they kind of had a curriculum, but it was really more so around tips of like box breathing, or like if you're really stressed, hold ice, that will calm you down, and kind of like, I think, really just papering over the root causes, which is why I was really so thrilled to find BedTyme, which was the next app that I found, and the one that changed my life. So yeah, I tried that, and gosh, I mean, I tried all sorts of supplements. Yeah, I mean, I think I tried yoga, meditation. When I would tell people, they would give me these tips, and I remember one person gave me this meditation to do, and I did it, and it was one of the worst nights of sleep I ever had because I was just laying there like this person swore to me that it worked. So what's wrong with me? And I always was, and as you know, you teach, we're all so critical of ourselves, and that just, compounds the problem. So really just a whirlwind.
Do you remember what you were supposed to do? What was that meditation about? Do you remember it?
Was like a sort of like a different like muscle relaxation, like, relaxing your toes and then like tightening that, just like, I don't know, absurd stuff to me now that I know what I know. But it was just surreal because everyone would swear that these things work, and for me they just wouldn't. And so it was very isolating. I think that's the other thing I wanted to point out, is that I felt really alone. I was just wondering why everyone else was okay and what was wrong with me. And that's why what you've built is so incredible. I mean, not only your teaching, but the community, and just, yeah, knowing that other people are dealing with the exact same thing. It's so powerful.
No, it's actually amazing, and I'm finding this kind of virtuous cycle where like someone like you shares their story, and then somebody else hears it and is like, I'm not alone, and then they do better, and then they want to share their story. So I think there's some real nice momentum here.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, with that said, yeah, we have this. There was a period of like this intense struggle. You're trying all kinds of things, nothing is really helping. You're feeling isolated, and what happens next in the story?
Yeah, so about a year ago, I found bedtime, and I just remember every day I would look forward to the lessons. It was like the highlight of my day, and just unlearning the different myths around sleep hygiene and coffee, and then the three P's, the precipitating event, the predisposition, the perpetuating factors. All of those things were so enlightening and so comforting. So I started to go through that, and working with Alina was so helpful. And I did it for about a month. And actually, during that time, I was
Actually,
in.
sorry, Anna. Let me
Yeah,
pause here for a second, because this is the really nice part where we want to hear about like when things started getting easier for you. But before we go there, I just want to clarify. So, from that initial bout of struggle until you found bedtime, was that like it was about 3 years?
yep, yeah, that was about a 3 year long struggle. And um, yeah, just very up and down. There would be times when I would sleep okay, and I really had no idea why. And then I would do the detective work, which then would lead to more struggle because there was no reason. It was just that I wasn't trying. Um, and then, yeah, there were other periods where, like I said, when I was on Xanax, there was a period where it got really, really bad. And, I went to my doctor, and she was like, well, I can give you these different things for anxiety. And I really didn't want to go on that. It just felt like it wasn't really going to solve anything. If anything, it was just going to paper over the problem. So yeah, I really feel like I dove into each nook and cranny of like a typical struggle that I think a lot of people go through. Trying all of these things, and going to your doctor, and yeah, and so on and so forth. So 3 years of that. I mean, now it's kind of a blur because it's been so long, and now I'm in a much better place. So yeah, sorry, I just jumped to the jumped forward a bit.
No, that's which is I would really want to spend time on that part, which is this is so nice. But yeah, so I think in summer we see like those 3 years was kind of like these waves of like things were really more intense, and then they were easier, and it was kind of mysterious why it was easier, but you were happy about that. But and life in general was I guess you graduated college, and you were working, and so you were still able to sort of like continue on with life, right? Or how impacted were you, or how was life in general?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was really hard, right when the struggle started, because I just graduated. All of my friends were gone. My then boyfriend was not there anymore. I was in this job that I was just starting, so a lot of change, and it was really tough. But I I really leaned on my mom, and actually my mom has had a 40 plus year long struggle with insomnia. And so her and I kind of bonded over this, and I really leaned on her. But her narrative was really, well, this is just, it runs in our family. Like your grandpa has, insomnia. I have insomnia. This is just the way it is, which isn't super hopeful. You're just kind of like, oh, okay. So this is my life now. But was kind of leaning on her. Um, and and then yeah, as I said, my then boyfriend moved back. I think a year or so later, and I was starting to feel a little bit more stability, kind of in my day to day. There were definitely times where I would let sleep really drive my life and kind of cancel things because I was tired, and I've thought about that now, and I think there's two kind of approaches. One is really when you feel somewhat okay to really push yourself to have the courage to still do the things that you love, but also sometimes it's okay also if you just aren't feeling up to it, and just being kind to yourself in those moments. So those two thoughts and ideas have really helped me since then. Yeah, and then I don't know if that's helpful, but it's kind
Yeah, no, that's well said. And now I think this leads us to like, how did you find bedtime? Was it also just randomly searching the app store, or how did you find it?
yeah, it really was just a coincidence. I just on the app store looked up insomnia and I found bedtime, and I did the trial, and I was hooked. So I so actually, yeah, when I found it, I was trying to I started to say I was in Serbia because my parents are Serbian immigrants. So I was there for about a month to see family and stuff. So I was there and kind of going through bedtime. Really, it was really illuminating and helpful. And then at the end of the month, I came back to the States, and whenever I go back, the jet lag is really not a problem. It's actually really nice because you suddenly become a morning person. I would wake up at like 6, but for me in my brain it was what, like 11. So I sort of used that plus with everything I knew from bedtime, and just started having very, very consistent sleep. And the other thing I did around that time was that I was taking a break from drinking. And so there were like, I don't know, I was just kind of in this phase of um, kind of trying to take care of myself a bit more, and yeah, really applying the lessons that I learned around letting go of control in these different senses. And so then after that, I stopped with bedtime because I felt really, you know, great, and I felt equipped to kind of go at it alone. And that was great for a while. And and then but of course there's always speed bumps on this journey. So I'll pause there before I keep going, but if there's
No, that was really nice. And just again, timeline wise, you found it about a year ago, right?
Mhm.
Something like that. And
Yeah,
then you worked within the app for how long? Maybe like 6 weeks or 2 months, or how
yeah,
long did
it was about a month, I think, like 5 weeks
about a
maybe.
month, something like that.
Hmm.
And your coach was Alina.
Yes, yes, Alina
How
was
was
great.
that working with Alina?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, she always gave me such profound answers. I would send her such a sometimes I would be a mess and kind of just jot down all of my thoughts, not even just as like one sentence paragraphs, and she would send me like, 6 paragraphs, really breaking everything down, and just being, so supportive, and really linking everything I was learning to my own personal struggles. So yeah, she was amazing. And then actually, I mean, I'll get to that, but I rejoined bedtime a few months ago and worked with her again, and that was, nice to reconnect with her. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, well, I think we'll definitely get to that. So, yeah, actually, pretty quickly, things were getting easier for you. You have this understanding, the relief. You're sleeping better. You're like graduating, and then yeah, and then you had a speed bump, which again, so normal, part of the journey, everyone. But how was that? A bit later, or when did that happen?
Yeah, that was a couple months later, actually. I would say I had around 3 or 4 months of just complete peace with sleep, and it was amazing. It was the first time in 3 or 4 years that I had felt that way. Um, and then some personal stuff happened, and had a few sleepless nights, and then a few sleepless nights started to bring back some of that trauma. I don't know. It's just kind of like, oh no, it's back. I did something wrong. Um, and yeah, just was kind of slowly descending into a really, really intense struggle again. But was kind of, again, it was very choppy. I would have some bad nights and then I have some good nights. And so the good nights really kept me going, and I would try to, and I kept Bedtime, the app. So I think I've done the curriculum like 10 times. And it's always so helpful. Um, so anyways, that happened. And then when things got really intense again was actually after I moved to Portugal. I Around November, um, I started to. It was weird. I had been sleeping really well, and my friend who I had told that I have this, I've experienced insomnia and all that, was kind of like, "Wow, that's so great. You're sleeping so well." And then it's like, boom! I just overthought it again and started not sleeping, and then had a lot of, and that's actually, I felt like I was at point zero again because I was having nights with like zero sleep, and it was really discouraging. But I once I rejoined Bedtime and kind of told Alina what was going on, um, she reassured me that, no, you're not at point zero. Actually, it's not possible. You've learned all of this stuff, and even if you're going through it, you know so much more, and we just need to kind of like process it and acknowledge your emotions and not push them away. And so yeah, starting doing that was really great. Working with Alina was really great. And yeah, so that was about, what was that now, like 2 or 3 months ago. And so actually, sorry, tell me if I'm babbling too. I just want to like go
No,
all
no,
over
you're
the place.
you're, you're sharing your story very nicely. I'm just following along your story. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm working in Bedtime with Alina, and around the holidays, I ended up going to Italy to spend Christmas with my friends, and that was also a period where I just had terrible, terrible nights of like no sleep. Partially because the stress of going somewhere new and meeting new people and traveling and all of that stuff, but I was just telling myself all of the worst things. And I remember that right around that time was actually when I was going to stop Bedtime, just because, I'm a student, and so I was just kind of trying to go at it alone a bit. And I told Alina how that was my plan, and she suggested that you have all of your videos in your channel, so those are obviously resources to look into. And it's funny because I really didn't even know the channel existed until a few months ago. So I had just been on Bedtime, and I would get your newsletters and stuff and read them. But I don't know. I didn't really think about it or look into it. But then when I found your channel, and started watching all the videos. I remember the first video I watched was the one with Coach Michelle about traveling during the holidays, and I watched that right at one of the lowest points in my trip, and I just cried so much because I just felt so seen, and you both just, it's like you were reading my mind or something. You just hit on every single aspect of the experience, and um, that was really a turning point, from then until now, when I'm just, yeah, leaps and bounds, better in that sense.
So glad. And note to myself is like, oh, we have to make sure everybody knows about the channel. But anyway, that's a different
It
story.
really could just be a me problem. It probably is.
I'm sure there's others, but um, that's so nice. And like, I guess like kind of like looking back now, um, from the first time you worked with Alina and then the second time and all that, was there kind of new insights that second time, or was it just that, kind of reinforcing what you already knew, or or what do we say to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was a bit of both. I mean, I definitely had some more foundational knowledge to I could kind of like sometimes detach and objectively see what was going on, but then there would be that pull to kind of all of these habits I had for years because it takes a while to really unlearn those and let go of them. So it was a bit of kind of more reiteration of things that I had learned, but also yeah, new insights that would come up around um, just acknowledging your emotions and your thoughts and not letting them really um, dictate how you feel. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but kind of acknowledging the emotions, feeling the emotions, but still being able to separate yourself a bit and see the bigger picture of, I'm going to be okay even if I don't sleep. And um, your body will decide, kind of, you can't really control it. All of these things were so helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of in passing here that there were like a lot of habits that you had, that you had developed over the past year that took some time for them to change. Like, can you remember any of those habits that changed?
Well, I think the biggest one is not canceling everything if I don't sleep. I would do that a lot because I would tell myself various things like, you're not gonna be fun, you're not gonna be yourself, so you should just not go. And in a way, it's just like punishing yourself and you're already going through it, but you're kind of like, well, this is your fault, so you don't get to do these things, when obviously that's not the case. It's not your fault, and it's just a misunderstanding with your brain. So that was something I really tried to um, yeah, go against and really let myself kind of go and enjoy things even if I didn't sleep. And yeah, that was the biggest one, I think. I definitely all the other sleep hygiene things, as soon as I learned about those in bedtime, I was like, oh, thank God. I don't need these anymore. So that was liberating.
Amazing. And I have to ask you this question. Have you been like sharing with your mom like what you've been learning and talking to her?
Oh yes, absolutely. I've spent so much time trying to, show her stuff in bedtime or like explain it. And I think she sees it as, helpful, but not in the same way I do. I think she still believes in certain things like, go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. Some of these kind of habits for her that she's seen work, which I think again are more so delegation, where she kind of tells herself, okay, if I go to bed at the same time and I wake up at the same time, it's gonna be great. So she's been receptive, but a bit also kind of stuck in her ways. So I've done my part, but the rest is on her.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. That's we can't can't force anybody to change when they're not ready for that. But that's nice. And I before I ask my, I have this kind of like last questions that I want to ask everyone. I want to ask you kind of like generally, if you kind of pick one or two of the most like helpful things you found for yourself during this journey. What things would you share to anyone that's struggling right now?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with these. It's so hard to pick just one or two. Um, but one thing that I really wish I knew is that you're not alone, and you're there's so many other people going through exactly what you're going through, and there's hope, and there's a community, and you don't have to be isolated in this struggle. And then the other thing I'd say is, as a personal control freak, giving up control can be very terrifying. But I think when you recognize your strength and courage to and trust yourself, it gets easier over time. I think it's a bit of a muscle. You have to practice it a lot, just giving up that control. But amazing things can happen. So I would say those two things have been some of the more profound things that have stuck with me.
That's fantastic. And I just have to ask you, do you have like a list you're looking at?
Oh yeah, I wrote all this stuff down, and I actually in my notebook I have a lot of notes from bedtime and from your teachings, and sometimes when I am having a bit of trouble sleeping, I like to get my thoughts down of like you can't control this, and your body's gonna fall asleep when it wants to, when it needs to, and just having those on paper and kind of, yeah, just getting it out there is has been helpful for me.
Yeah. Oh, so that's a third one, like a nice third tip there for everyone. Super
Yeah.
nice. And now, actually, you've sort of maybe already answered this, but I always like to ask people, like, this learning from the struggle with sleep. Has it taught you things that you've applied in other parts of your life?
I am so glad you asked that because I really wanted to talk about this. Yeah, that's why I think i- what your teachings are so powerful and life changing is that they are so universal and they've really helped me in so many areas of my life. I mean, this is maybe more of a minor example, but as I said, I would get a lot of stress and anxiety before tennis matches, and um, so I still play, and I noticed that when I was practicing and there was no expectation of winning or anything, I would just play completely freely and way better. And then as soon as I played in a match, I would just choke because I was so wedded to the idea of winning. And I remember before one of my matches, after I did bedtime, I I really love my journal. So I wrote down a lot of the teachings and how they applied to the match, kind of like, just be at peace no matter what happens, like kind of those types of things. Like you can't really control everything. I mean, in a match, there's certain things you can control, but at the same time, there's a lot you can't. And I remember that was one of the first matches I won because I totally had no attachment to the outcome, and yeah, I played completely freely. So um yeah, it sounds small, but it's been like a 20 plus year struggle with kind of managing the pressure of those things, and obviously with sleep and with school and all of those things. It's just, yeah, it's completely transformed my life.
Amazing. So glad to hear this. And the other question I have, and again, you sort of already touched upon this, but I'm going to ask it again because I like this question. And it is okay, if you could pick one thing to tell yourself when you were in the struggle, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, okay. I think I would say, what's the worst that can happen if you don't sleep? Realistically, big picture. You've done so many things without sleep. You can do anything, really. And having that knowledge is so freeing. I mean, it's one of the reasons now I'm in such a better place. Is just I go to sleep and I'm just like, yeah, I can, whatever happens, it happens. And then obviously I always sleep when I think that. So that's the great irony. But yeah, I would tell myself that because even when I was first struggling with it and I was really deep and didn't know really anything about any of this, um, as soon as I would be in a sleepless night and I would get to that moment of like, okay, you're not going to sleep, just accept it. I would accept it and then I would sleep. It's just like baffling, but yeah, I would say that.
Super, super nice. Well, I'll just say that when I saw you having all these like things written down in your diary, like if you have like I don't know, a number of things that you want to share, then feel free to you can send it to me and I can read it. Or a little plug here, we're starting this online magazine called Within Magazine that's going to be like for everyone in the community to contribute to. So I'll keep you in mind for that if you want to share it there as well.
Please, I would love to. I have so many notes. It would be great to make them something coherent and something everyone can look at. I'd love to.
Amazing. All right, well, I want to thank you then so much for coming on, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care.